Very much, Madam Chair, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. This past summer, the Equality of Opportunity Project released a study looking at the state of economic opportunity in the United States throughout various regions. One issue in the study looked at the geographic variation in intergenerational poverty, the question of how likely one's parents' income at the time of one's birth might be an accurate predictor of where one ends up on the economic continuum later in life as an adult. I'm pleased to say that that Salt Lake City and the surrounding area in my home state of Utah outperformed every other major metropolitan region in the country in that regard, in this important metric. Children growing up in Salt Lake City, in other words, see a greater potential for economic mobility during their lifetimes than children born really almost anywhere else in the world. So I'd like to ask a couple of questions, kind of follow up on this. Let's start with Dr. Winship. I think Utah provides an example of what success in the area of economic mobility might look like. Could you comment on how strong institutions, robust civil society, and a successful private welfare system might factor into this equation?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Senator. I do think that that when people look at the fantastic mobility rate that Salt Lake City does have, those are the things that make sense, especially if we talk to people on the ground. I think that it is these social capital strengths that the local area has. So among the most among the strongest predictors of mobility in the data set that you're talking about are a number of indicators of sort of family strength and stability. Dr. Kearney raised this earlier. I think it is an important issue that we need to take seriously. Utah fares very well on those sorts of measures. Broader social capital measures like how integrated people are into the community that they live. Even the book Bowling Alone, it sort of has found these correlations between even how many people are in bowling leagues and economic outcomes. So it does seem to make a big difference. And there are these cultural components that I don't think we understand well, where you do find pockets of people that have assembled a society that seems to work. I think you find that in places where there are a lot of Scandinavians for some reason. So that's right.
Is it because they like to bowl? Is it?
I have not established an empirical link between the two, but you do sort of tend to find similar outcomes among Swedish Americans, Norwegian Americans, and looking at actually Norway and Sweden. I don't think it's well understood yet, but.
What about policies encouraging robust hiring and providing strong incentives for work?
Well, I think incentives for work are very important, and I think you're seeing a lot of energy among some prominent conservatives, such as yourself, Senator Rubio, Congressman Ryan, around reforming our safety net programs to fix the disincentives that we currently have, to make it clear to folks that taking work will benefit them, and in fact to do that in a way where taking work doesn't necessarily benefit them under today's systems. We have these incredibly high marginal tax rates where the argument is not that the poor receiving these benefits are bad people somehow. They're behaving as you and I would behave faced with the same incentives. There's very little reason in a lot of these programs to actually look for work and take that job when you're going to lose all these benefits. So I think the exciting thing among some of the proposals on the right is to think very seriously about poverty, but also to remedy these disincentives that aren't good for anyone.
It's a nice segue to the question I was going to ask to Dr. Mather. There is some consensus that our federal welfare system is clunky and poorly designed. Uncoordinated phase-outs of means-tested programs where individuals with modest incomes may see astronomical effective marginal tax rates are part of the problem. Would you agree with the fact that they're a part of the problem, and what do you think we ought to do about that?
I think there is truth in the fact that even though let's say the Earned Income Tax Credit program, which has really high marginal tax rates in the phase-out range, so as people are earning higher incomes, they're suddenly faced with extremely high marginal tax rates. Those do create a disincentive to work, or at least to put in more hours. There might be an hour's impact. So I think designing those better, or designing those so that people don't face these huge disincentives to work, could actually go a long way towards getting more people into the labor market and sort of keeping them there.
Is these, in other words, create effectively poverty traps in which people feel compelled not to do that which might be for in order to their long-term benefit, but in the short term, they might face penalties. And if we could coordinate these phase-outs so that they're more carefully designed,
Absolutely.
We could avoid those.
We could avoid those situations.
I see my time has expired. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, Senator Lee, for being willing to discuss this issue. We may not agree on every solution. The two of us chair and co-chair the Antitrust Subcommittee of Judiciary, so we've worked on a lot of things together, and I think it's a nice end here. I think we've had a civil hearing. We've approached an issue, as Secretary Reich and I were discussing before this hearing. There are a number of Republicans that are being willing to talk about this issue this time, which I think is really important as we go forward. I did want to note, Senator Lee, I was checking out our report. This is now my time to hawk our products. Secretary Reich has a movie out that is on DVD, right? And what is the name of it?
It's called Inequality for All.
Inequality for All.
iTunes, DVD, on demand.
And coming out on Netflix.
Late February.
Very good. And then we have a report for the Joint Economic Committee on the Democratic side here on income inequality in the United States. Not as exciting as the movie, but pretty good. Right here. And I was looking, as you were talking about Salt Lake City, and in fact, this is supported by our report. We looked at the quintile, the lowest income quintile, lowest 20%, and their chances of reaching the highest quintile. And in fact, of the 13 states that are 10% or higher, Utah is one of the highest. I will also note that Minnesota is in the group. And I would also note that California is in the group, interestingly enough. And the highest one is, can anyone guess? Your chance, what state you have the best chance of going right now, this moment in time, from the bottom 20% to the highest 20%? North Dakota, with all of the energy work that's being done there. So that is at 18.3%. So I think that being said, the fact that we only have 13 states, that you have about a 1 in 10, 1 in 11 average chance of going from that quintile to the top is still a reason to be concerned. One of the things I did want to end here with is that there was some talk of people trying to divide over this issue. I don't think that's what Senator Lee's trying to do. I don't think that's what Chairman Brady was trying to do. And I think that this is an issue that we must address in our country. We may have some disagreements on what exactly the data shows, but I think we know there's a problem. And I think we clearly have some disagreements on the solutions, but I'm looking for some common ground here. And I really appreciated the tone of the witnesses and how we're able to approach this issue. And I'm actually quite excited to be working on it. So the record is going to stay open for 5 business days for any member who wishes to submit an additional statement or any additional questions. Thank you very much to our witnesses. The hearing is adjourned.